The views expressed on the Jerry Cahill CF podcast are that of Jerry Cahill and guests, and not necessarily those of the Boomer Esiason Foundation. Nothing on the Jerry Cahill CF podcast should be considered medical advice. Such advice can only be given by a physician who is experienced with cystic fibrosis. The Boomer Esiason Foundation, Jerry Cahill and guests cannot be held responsible for any damage which may result from using the information on this podcast without the permission of your medical doctor. You're listening to the Jerry Cahill CF podcast presented by the Boomer Esiason Foundation and jerrycahill.com.
Welcome to Jerry Cahill's Living, Breathing, Succeeding podcast series. This show, Post-Pulmonary Exacerbation, was made possible through an unrestricted educational grant from Corbus to the Boomer Esiason Foundation. Today you will meet Robert Mahoney, 31 years old, from Long Island, New York. Robert was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at 8 weeks of age. Robert is an only child that grew up on the water and loves boating and the outdoors. Hobbies include travel, sports such as soccer, and especially the NFL. Robert is a real estate investor that owns and manages property in Ohio and is happily married to his wife Allie for 1.5 years. It's an honor to be speaking with Robert today as he tells us about what it feels like after IV treatment for a post-pulmonary exacerbation.
My name is Robert Mahoney. I'm 31 years old. I'm from Long Island, New York, and I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at 8 weeks old. I grew up an only child. My parents are very involved in raising money for cystic fibrosis. I went to school in Baldwin, New York, at public high school. Then I went on to Penn State, and I graduated from there, moved to the city. After the city, moved back here to Long Island, bought a house, and I live in East Rockaway now and with my wife, and we've been married a 1.5 years. My everyday life as far as career is I own property in Cleveland, Ohio, and I manage it as well over the phone. I have 2 guys out there that help me out. And then I also bartend 3 nights a week at a restaurant. When I'm not sick and I'm enjoying life, I love to be outdoors. I love to boat. I live on the water. I like to jet ski. I like to take advantage of every second of every day and live my life to the fullest. I also enjoy the NFL. I like watching football every Sunday, and my favorite team is the Chicago Bears. I'm a huge fan. I have season tickets in Chicago and I live in New York, so that should tell you a lot. A pulmonary exacerbation is a flare-up of the lungs. It usually causes a lot of mucus and a lot of fatigue for my body. Having coming off a pulmonary exacerbation, I feel a lot better after these antibiotics that kicked in through IV. When I go through a pulmonary exacerbation, my routine for my day is totally thrown off. I'm worn out, tired, sometimes have a fever, usually the chills. I usually take multiple baths just to get my temperature in my body back to normal. My lungs feel really inflamed. I feel tight. I lose a lot. My appetite's not as good because I have all this mucus basically choking me out. Just my whole schedule's off. It's not me, it's not myself, and I have to plan around the pulmonary exacerbations instead of planning my day around what I should be planning around. For this pulmonary exacerbation just that I had, I was sick for about 7 days when I realized I needed to be on IV. I generally don't use oral antibiotics because I'm resistant to most of them, but there are times that I do use prednisone to help open up my airways because the inflammation is a problem. And that usually helps for a couple days, but if it doesn't work past a couple days, I know I need IV antibiotics. I feel 20 times better than I felt 3 weeks ago when I first started the IV. At that time, I was sleeping all day, had a jar full of mucus I coughed up every day, and now my lungs are clear. I'm coughing up very minimum amount of mucus, and I feel a lot better. I deal with pulmonary exacerbations probably every 2 to 3 months, so it's a big part of my life, and I have to plan for the downtime, having to plan to be on IVs, and can't go on certain trips, can't go to work sometimes, but it's part of my life that I adjust to and get used to. My pulmonary exacerbations have become a little less frequent recently. with the advancements that have been going on in the CF world. They definitely still affect my everyday life though, so it's not to the point where it needs to be. With CF being an inflammatory disease, we want to try to stop the vicious cycle of the bacterial load and lung damage caused by all the coughing and inflammation, and we currently need something very bad as there's an unmet critical need. For inflamed lungs, as of now, currently you could really only take prednisone, but hopefully in the future there'll be something else that you could take long term. To avoid future pulmonary exacerbations, I try to exercise and I try to do my treatments on a daily basis, and that's really all you can do, and as long as you're doing your treatments, it should help reduce the pulmonary exacerbations. If you were coming out of a pulmonary exacerbation, I would say stick to your routine with your medicine and don't miss anything if you can, and try to exercise if your lungs permit it. For someone who's going through a pulmonary exacerbation, I always say to keep your head up high and stay positive. It will get better. I get my mind off going through PEs when I'm on IVs by just looking forward to the future and knowing that it will get better. I've been through this so many times. I've been on IV over 20 times. I know that after 2 or 3 weeks, it always ends up working out. If I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel when I'm starting to feel better after all these antibiotics kick in, it's a very positive thing for my mind. Now that I finished my IVs, I really feel great. I feel strong again. I have an awesome appetite and I'm ready to live my life again. CF has been a part of my entire life, prioritizing what is right and what is wrong. It's made me into the person I am today, and I wouldn't change anything for the world.